All right, today, guys, I'm going to go over some differences between the Amazon Special generic ARCA clamps for non-ARCA railed firearms. This particular one is from BZ Tac. The other is, I'm going to clamp it here, the Tony Boo TU8. When I first ordered this one was roughly about $25 to $30, depending on if it was on special or not. This is kind of a generic painted aluminum, as opposed to the BZ Tac, which is anodized green, and it is close to the same anodization color as the Fat Boys tripod, which is nice, but there are some fundamental differences between the two that is worth you seeing the differences too. So right off the bat, the ARCA rail clamp that Fat Boy supplies, I've noticed that there is going to be some variances in the thickness of the ARCA clamp. As an example, this is a ARCA rail from Armaspec, and the typical rifle ARCA rail that I use, it's very snug at this clamp setting, but here it is. I've run this all the way in the lock position, and you can see this Armaspec has plenty of slack. So there's some variation in the ARCA rail, but keep in mind, this one is not tight enough with it fully clamped. You'll see how that comes into play with these generic clamps. So here's the BZ Tac, and if I go to clamp my toggle, it goes only about, I would say, 3/4 of the way. So that can be adjusted, which, you know, it's not a deal breaker. The Fat Boys has an adjustable nut for adjusting the thickness. But if you look at the way it interfaces with the ARCA dovetail, you'll see that that is not very close to a typical ARCA dimensions. And that's going to create some issues. So where could this be a problem? Well, if I'm swapping between a clamp for a friend's rifle that doesn't have ARCA rail and then back to want to run my typical, now I have to adjust this setting all over again, and that could be a problem. So that's a strike against the BZ Tac. The other thing is the ARCA stops. Again, these are not all made for this specific tripod, but the ARCA stops that are built into this are in the center. And if you look at the way the ARCA clamp engages this, you'll see that the stops are in the middle. So it doesn't actually stop anything, it just slides on through, and those little stops are not helpful for anything. The other main problem is if you look at the way the clamp itself operates, it has kind of a telescopic, see if I can't get you pointed right here, like a telescopic tube. And so what that does is when you clamp it down, they have a lot of lateral side-to-side movement. I don't know if you can see that here as well. I'm going to put, I'm not going to use a rifle so that my video doesn't get taken down, but if I put this 2x6 in here and we clamp it down, look at the motion here. You see that movement back and forth? That's in the clamp itself. It's tight, but the clamp itself has lateral movement. So that's a lot of lateral movement in the clamp itself. So that's something to consider. It looks great. For its price point, which is also about $30, I didn't mention that. It looks really great. The other fundamental flaw, if you will, is if you're going to use this for zeroing red dots on handguns, I've got a piece of plastic here, but if you was to want to clamp this in to zero a red dot on a handgun to use your use a tripod, you can see that it is not narrow enough. This is supposed to be close to the same dimensions as a Glock 17. There's a lot of play there. So while it does get pretty narrow, it's not narrow enough for a handgun. It's probably going to be sufficient for like a 10-22 or something like that, but not for this handgun. Something to consider. Another problem or potential problem is how close the tightening wheel is. So if you look at the I can't even get a finger in there. So if you have accessories or a light or a laser or anything that is kind of going to be taking up this space, this being so close can interfere with that. Additionally, it can interfere with other parts of your tripod. So for example, if let's move this to this position, that creates a little bit of an interference there. Now mind you, this is movable, but it's just something to consider when you're comparing these. These are roughly the same price point for your Amazon special generic rifle clamps. So let's move on to the Tony Boo. Back to the Tony Boo, which is absolutely ridiculous to say out loud. But let's start with the Arca stops. The Arca stops are actually in the correct, well, a typical place where you'd find them. So if we lock this or add a little bit of tension, you'll notice from the bottom that the stops actually keep the clamp from sliding off the Arca, which is helpful in low light if you're swapping this back and forth. I do see that same tolerance variance. If you actually see how thick that Arca rail section looks, I mean, this one I can barely even get it to halfway snug down. So it's way out of dimension as opposed to most Arca rails. Something to consider. For me, that's a huge deal breaker because I want to swap back and forth between Arca rail rifle and this clamp. As far as the jaws have a lot going for them. So if you look at the way it's designed, you have these rods in opposing holes, so they actually don't collapse into each other, and that makes it really solid side to side. There's a minor amount of wiggle. So we're gonna do the same 2x6 sort of test and see how much wiggle we get. This is probably way too comprehensive of a test for an Amazon rifle clamp, but just to be fair, all right, we're snugged up, and here's our twist. I don't see any side to side movement in the clamp itself. It's actually really good. Let me get out a little bit, maybe if that'll help you. So there's a little bit of very minor flex in the tripod itself. You can see the tripod legs twisting ever so slightly, but not in the clamp. That's really good. So kudos to Tony Boo for that. Let's look at the handgun feature. Forgot the rubber on the BZ Tac, the rubber pads, it's just flat to flat and they're adhesive. You can see how easy it is for them to come off. Like, it doesn't take anything. Let's see if we get this to focus for it to come off. It doesn't sit in a groove or anything, which may not be an issue. I haven't used it long term. I just got this out of the box, but just initial observation, there's nothing to keep it in there. You can almost see this one's a little bit misapplied, but the Tony Boo runs all of their pads in a groove. So yes, they're adhesive, but they can't slide anywhere because they're inletted in this nice groove, which I thought was a cool feature. This one's actually cheaper than the BZ Tac, so something to note. Let's get to one more thing, the knob. So if we look back here, the knob is quite a bit out. Before, I couldn't even get one finger behind the knob. This one I can get almost 2 fingers. The knob itself also spins very smoothly with almost there's like no resistance. So that's pretty cool. As far as handgun goes, this is actually going to be kind of hard to do with one hand because I am not a videographer. Handgun, we're going to try to, oh God, hold this. Here we go. Our handgun has room to spare, so we can clamp this in. This is not how you do it, but I'm just trying to illustrate that it does get narrow enough for a handgun as well as wide enough for even like a bench rest style rifle. So if you're going to use that to dial in your red dots on your sight or on your handguns, this would be a great model to do that. Look how easy that spins. It's pretty dope. Overall, the quality, fit, and finish between both of these is lackluster. I'm not going to lie. but they are $30 clamps available from Amazon. Let's flip this around so we can show you the two. That's my little overview slash review of initial impressions of the BZ-Tac versus the Tony Boo TU8 from Amazon. Of course, we're using the excellent Fat Boys invert tripod. Hopefully this will help you save 30 or so bucks and getting the wrong product.